Hello, everyone, and welcome to What's Now. I'm your host, Christine Napier. This is a show where we take a look at trends, products, great places to go, and focus on research. And in fact, on this episode, we are going to be talking about your health as well as some fun adventures for your spring and summertime. Right now, though, I recently focused on a documentary called Two of Me. This takes a deep dive into what it's like living with a rare disease. Let's take a look.
Imagine experiencing excruciating, painful attacks and chronic symptoms that disrupted your daily life for 15 years before finally learning that you are living with a rare genetic disease. A new documentary documenting today on Rare Disease Day is shining a spotlight on acute hepatic porphyria, or AHP, to raise awareness and help shorten the 15 years it can take to receive an accurate diagnosis. Part of the problem is that AHP is rare but can have common symptoms like nausea and fatigue, which can lead to years of misdiagnosis and even unnecessary medical procedures and treatments. Joining us today are Megan, a patient featured in the film, and Dr. Emanuel, a healthcare professional with experience in AHP management. Thank you both of you for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, Doctor, let's start with you. What is AHP, and why can diagnosing AHP be so challenging?
Well, thank you for having us on. I'm a hematologist oncologist from Little Rock, Arkansas, and care for several patients with AHP. And it's a group of diseases, rare diseases, but they present, as you said, with common symptoms, abdominal pain and nausea. So oftentimes their doctors are looking for the more common things first: gallbladder problems, appendicitis, other abdominal things, and they do the testing for those more common things. And patients are put through various tests, procedures, even exploratory surgeries. And sometimes it's years before a doctor will narrow it down and start thinking about porphyria diagnosis and then proceeding on with the testing for that.
Dr. Emanuel, how can this rare disease be detected earlier to shorten the diagnosis?
It's mostly recognition and the doctor thinking of it in the first slate of tests rather than way down the road. And so whether it be the primary care physician or the specialist that the patient is referred on to, thinking about doing the testing is the first step. And then even that after that, the testing is tricky and complicated, sometimes has to be done while a patient is having an acute attack. And so even doing the testing to get a diagnosis can take time, but getting to that testing stage and thinking of testing is usually the longest time lag.
Megan, tell us about your journey to receiving an accurate AHP diagnosis.
Yeah, so first of all, thank you so much for having me on today. And I also want to thank Al for asking me to be a part of the Two of Me documentary and allowing me to share my journey to diagnosis for AHP. So I first started having symptoms at the age of 12 at the onset of puberty. Hormones can be a huge trigger for some porphyria patients, and I found that to be true in my case. Unfortunately, I started having severe abdominal pain and nausea. And of course, when my mother took me to doctors, they thought of your typical suspects. And when I was tested for those things, the test would come back, that I was fine or inconclusive. And so we just kept going to doctor after doctor until finally one of my doctors suggested that, my mom might have Munchausen syndrome, which is a very serious accusation and could have cost me more time. But I finally had a doctor at the age of 18 think to test me for porphyria, and I finally got my diagnosis after 6 years.
Megan, what is the goal of this film, Two of Me, living with porphyria?
So our hope is that as people watch Two of Me, living with porphyria, that we can create awareness around the condition, that patients and doctors will think to ask about porphyria, to think to test for porphyria, and that we can in turn shorten that time to diagnosis to a much more reasonable amount of time, because 15 years is just too long.
And Megan, I know it's important to raise awareness of this disease for you, but tell me exactly why.
So I feel like if we can tell, one of the things that we want is for people as they see the film to tell at least 15 other people, as a symbol of that 15 years it takes to get to diagnosis. And for me personally, I feel like if one person's journey to diagnosis can be made less painful and made shorter, my journey will have been worth it.
Where can we get more information, Megan, and watch Two of Me living with Porphyria and learn more about AHP?
You can go to pinpointahp.com to watch Two of Me living with Porphyria, as well as get tons of great information on AHP for both doctors and patients.
Thank you so much, Dr. Emanuel and Megan, for joining us today. Really appreciate this discussion. Megan, I appreciate you sharing your story, and I'm looking forward to watching. Thanks for your time today.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.